Growing up, I'd always heard stories from friends and family who were a part of the Navajo reservation. Don't let your cigarette shine in the darkness. Be careful what you say. Be careful what you do. You just might attract a Skinwalker. I never gave much attention or importance to those very crucial details, and I wouldn't until that very night, on June 15th, 2009, where my life changed forever. During this time of my life, I was 19 years old, fresh out of high school, having started school a year later than my fellow peers, which put me a year higher than everybody else in my grade. I was driving to Southern California, up from the very tip of Arizona. I was in the process of moving down to San Diego, tired of the life that I was living down in Arizona where I was at, tired of the same old friends and family. It was becoming too toxic for me, even though the things they warned me about of the culture were very, very true, that I refused to believe in at the time. Growing up, I always just assumed they were folklore, tales to scare kids with to make sure they don't stay after dark, or made up stories by native drunks. Little did I know, shamans, people who realistically practice magic, the dark kind, and people who had the ability to shapeshift into whatever animal skin they wore, were all very, very real. So, on that day, June 15th, 2009, I was making one of several trips down to my new apartment just outside of San Diego. Because of my tiny 1991 Honda Accord, I couldn't fit that many things, and due to my family being poor, I didn't really have the means of help, which means I had to make several trips back and forth, loading a few boxes at a time. This was probably either the second or third trip down there. I was exhausted, sleep deprived, tired of driving hour after hour on the road. Sure, I loaded up on coffee, Monster energy drinks, whatever I can find to keep myself wired, so I can make these horrendous trips as fast and efficiently as I possibly could, without totally killing myself, by giving myself a sleep-induced heart attack, or should I say, lack of sleep. I would frequently pull over and try and take short 3 to 4 hour interval sleeps, just to allow my body some rest. It was pretty rough, I'm not gonna lie. And on that day, June 15th, 2009, it was later on at night, probably closer to midnight. I don't exactly remember the time. I was just leaving Mexican Water. I had just stopped and got gas and refueled. Mexican Water is at the very topmost border of Arizona, still very much in the Navajo area. I was heading southwest, down on the 160. I don't even recall being out of town for more than 10 minutes. There's no way it could have been longer than that. I had just stopped and refueled, smoked a cigarette, and no, I was not being conscientious or aware of keeping my cigarette cherry covered like I should have. Out in the darkness next to my car, not really caring or even thinking. But I had done this time and time again, never had an issue, so I'm not sure why this specific time was any special. Maybe it wasn't, but part of me wants to try and put 2 and 2 together, because maybe they were related. So, I'm about 10 minutes or so down the road, and I'm getting very tired. I've already had 2 monsters, and my body can only sustain so much. So I turn on the radio, try and find some good music to try and keep myself awake. I tried blaring it. It helped a little bit, but not the best. And to answer your question, if my lack of sleep caused me to hallucinate any of this, well, no. I wasn't that tired, just more worn out from the constant driving. I just got done tinkering with the radio when I look up just in time to see this large shape, what looked to be coming towards my vehicle. No, running towards my vehicle, on 4 legs, very fast. As it got closer, my headlights lit this thing up. That's when I can make out in a split second. This was an enormous, large black wolf with piercing red eyes, coming right head first towards my vehicle. I yelled, went to slam on my brakes, but just as I did that, it came in contact with my vehicle and leapt over the front, over my hood, and behind. I nearly swerved off the road, screaming. Had I swerved just a little harder, I would have flipped my vehicle. I was sitting there on 160, facing perpendicular to the highway. My vehicle fully stopped. I'm breathing heavily, looking around me, trying not to have a panic attack, thinking to myself, what was that I just saw? But I quickly regained any sort of control that I had lost in that moment, turning my vehicle back around and going the way I was supposed to originally go, shaking it off. But now, this lingering feeling crept over me. This paranoia that I can't describe. Now, I found myself, about every 5 or 10 seconds, looking over my shoulder into the rearview mirror, or my side mirrors, as if I was expecting something to be there. Wouldn't you know it? Not even a couple of minutes later, the radio now turned off, because I felt like I couldn't concentrate. This shape, this same black wolf, was now running behind my car. Its eyes gave it away, and I could see it in my rearview mirror, getting closer and closer, even though now I'm pushing 65, 70, 75. It appeared to have no problems at all keeping up, like it was toying with me. And then it disappeared again, and reappeared on the driver's side of my vehicle, keeping right up with me, and actually going faster by getting right up to my driver's side door, looking over at me, and giving me this terrifying grin, as if kind of a gotcha expression. I swear I saw it smirk at me. Not a happy smirk, like a devious, sinister smirk, like just wait till I get my hands on you, till I could show you what evils I can really do. That was the feeling it gave me. But I had to keep my eyes on the road, going nearly 80 miles an hour, or else I would have probably crashed and killed myself. Between my eyes darting onto the road and back at this thing, it disappeared again. Now I was even more freaked out. Not sure what I was doing, not sure what was following me, or what was my now plan of action. I was driving a dinky little 1991 Honda Accord. It's not like I had a Ferrari and could outpace this thing. My car was a hunk of junk, purchased from my older uncle, who had put that thing through lots of wear and tear. If it came down to my life needing saved, well, I didn't trust this thing. It was a cheap hunk of metal. That's about all it was good for, is getting me from point A to point B. And now, I was having to rely on this thing to keep me safe from whatever that thing is. In that moment of time, well, during the course of this entire event, the thought of this being a Skinwalker or a Shapeshifter never occurred in my mind. In fact, I didn't know what it was. I figured it was supernatural, some sort of evil, but I never thought of it being somebody who shapeshifted, or somebody brought on by evil towards me. Another minute or so went by, when all around me, I couldn't see it. Behind me, to the sides of me, or in front of me. Then it appeared again, in front of me, on the side of the highway, on my passenger side. This time, standing up on two legs, in a position just like a sprinter would, looking ready to pounce on my vehicle the second it drove by. Its eyes and face were directly looking right at me, as if waiting for the right moment. And in my horror, my jaw was dropping as I looked at this thing driving by. It leapt just as my worst nightmare would have expected. It leapt directly onto my vehicle, and the sheer weight of this thing nearly knocked my vehicle over. It was quite an impact, and caused me to almost swerve off the road again. But I regained control, and in that time, this thing had climbed up onto my roof, and was trying to break my windows by smacking them. Now, I was in a full-blown panic, trying to swerve to throw this thing off my car. That's when the entire car began filling with two things: the smell of putrid death, like I had never smelled in my life. Imagine finding a dead deer on the side of the road, throwing it in the cab of your car, and letting it sit there on a hot summer day. Now, I want you to take that even further. Go and sit in the cab with this dead, rotting deer. Can you imagine the utter putrid smell of being trapped and enclosed in a very small area with a dead carcass? The smell would be intoxicatingly powerful, making you vomit. That's how this was, as if my face was being shoved in the smell of rot. That putrid smell, along with the most demonic native chanting I'd ever heard, complete with drums banging, as if I was being surrounded by some sort of demonic native ceremony, filling my car. And that's when I felt my body begin to change, like I was in a trance, or being possessed, or something. It almost felt like the lifeblood of me being drained out, like this thing was sucking my soul from atop the roof of my car. Holding on, still maintaining a quick speed, my entire body was turning numb, and I felt like I was losing consciousness, all while trying to maintain composure enough to drive my vehicle. And just then, as I was losing consciousness more and more, feeling like I was falling into a deep sleep, as if I was being frozen to death, my entire body temperature was dropping. I could feel it. It was one of the worst things I'd ever felt. I just knew, in my subconscious, in my inner being, I was dying. Then, just like a Hollywood movie, in the nick of time, a semi-truck was coming my direction, on the opposite lane. Just as soon as those headlights shone from that truck, everything stopped. The smell, the chanting, the drumming, and I felt whatever that thing was leaping off the roof of my car. I don't know where it leapt off to, but it jumped off somewhere. I drove faster than I ever could, while regaining my body temperature, regaining my feeling from being numb, regaining my consciousness. I was very fortunate that I was only about 2 or 3 minutes outside Dinahatso, which is roughly around 20 minutes from where I'd last filled up. There isn't much civilization there either, as really that's kind of how all of Arizona is. But I pulled in to the market, and I slept there in the parking lot while I cried and cried, shaking in fear, not sure what to do. For some stupid reason, I should have had a cell phone, but I didn't, prioritizing other stupid things in my life other than having a means of communication. The next morning, I asked a stranger if I could borrow their phone, called my grandfather, and told him exactly what had happened. And actually, I didn't just speak to my grandfather, but also my father, and they both told me I had attracted a Skinwalker. They called it the native word, which I won't repeat, just in case I'm going to somehow attract it again, and I don't want that. I figured the word Skinwalker is a little more safer. They told me that I have to go see a medicine man and get clean before I could resume my trip. So, I drove my sweet butt all the way back in the opposite direction, seeking the medicine man that our family sees, getting blessed, and hoping that I was okay. After that, I never made any more trips after dark. If it was going to get dark and I wouldn't make it to my destination, I slept in any parking lot I could find, and would only drive from now on during the daylight. This experience has molded me, shaped me, changed me from my inner being outward. I'll never be the same. If you or somebody you know has a terrifying experience you would like to share with me or for me to read to my viewers, please send it to stories@whatlurksbeneath.com. You can find the email in the description below.